So I think, you have all those things, but maybe if I had to call out one thing, it would be, or two things. It would be the lawfare and the assassination attempt. And I think the assassination attempt may not have had as much of an effect on people if it weren't for the backdrop of the lawfare.
Thank you for tuning in to the Removing Barriers podcast. I'm Jay.
And I'm MCG.
And we're attempting to remove barriers so we can all have a clear view of the cross.
This is episode 182 of the Removing Barriers podcast. And in this episode, we'll be talking about the demographics of Trump's victory.
Hi, this is Jay. MCG and I would like for you to help us remove barriers by going to removingbarriers.net and subscribing to receive all things removing barriers. If you'd like to take your efforts a bit further and help us keep the mics on, consider donating at removingbarriers.net/donate. Removing Barriers, a clear view of the cross.
And joining us in this episode is Sam. Sam is no stranger to the Removing Barriers podcast. Sam, welcome back.
MCG, Jay, thanks for having me.
Great. Well,
I think I say the same thing every time, but I'll have to come up with a new response.
Great. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Sam. So the elections are over and Donald Trump will be the 47th president of the great US of A.
Whoop, whoop.
Well, I think Jay has just revealed herself to be a garbage person.
A deplorable.
I'm not going to reveal what side I'm on. Sam, are you a garbage person too, or you don't want to reveal?
I'll reveal. I'm one of them, and I call them maggots.
Oh, nice. I like that.
Wow. So I'm talking to a maggot and a garbage person.
Well, they say MAGA, and they think we're garbage, so it's maggots.
Yeah, it's appropriate. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess maybe I'm a chocolate maggot.
I'll leave that for your wife to determine. Let's start by going over some of the stats we saw coming out of the 2024 election. So I have a clip here from CNN that I think explain pretty much on a secular level why Trump won. So here's CNN on why Trump won.
Holy Toledo. All right. Trump gained ground in 49 states and the District of Columbia compared to 2020. I went back through the record books. When was the last time a party gained in so many different places? You have to go all the way back to 1992 when Bill Clinton improved upon Michael Dukakis's performance in 49 states, plus the District of Columbia. The bottom line is no matter where you looked on the map, Kate Baldwin, no matter where you looked, Donald Trump was improving on where he did 4 years ago, except for Washington State. It is no wonder that at this particular point, he looks like he's going to be the first Republican to win the popular vote since George W. Bush back in 2004.
So there we have it. I have some more, but Trump seemed like he has gained across every demographics, maybe except for black women, but I think he probably gained there as well. And historic since 1992, back in the Clinton days. But I'm going to let this finish and then we'll talk about it.
And to pull that off, he gained ground with groups that Republicans do not generally count as part of their winning coalition, or it really at all. How much ground did he gain?
Yeah, holy Toledo. It's just like, oh, my goodness gracious. These are the types of groups that you would never have thought that Donald Trump would have gained so much support among 8 years ago when he first won against Hillary Clinton. Trump's was the best GOP showing among 18 to 29-year-olds in 20 years. You have to go all the way back to 2004. How about among black voters? It was the best performance for a Republican candidate for president in 48 years since Gerald Ford back in 1976. And among Hispanic voters, the exit polls only go back since 1972. But Donald Trump's performance on Tuesday was the best for a Republican presidential candidate in exit poll history. He literally goes all the way back through history and breaks history. This is what we're talking about, Kate Baldwin. Groups that you never thought that Donald Trump would do well among, even for a Republican candidate, that is what he did. If the 2016 election was about Donald Trump breaking through with white working class voters, this election was about breaking through and going to that Democratic coalition and tearing it apart.
And it wasn't just what he did for his own support. It trickled down to helping the Senate and helping in the House?
Yeah. So, a lot of talk this morning and this week is, the GOP is going to have a Senate majority. We don't know if the Republicans are going to have a House majority, but we think that that's the most likely to be the case. But I want you to look at the 2024 House GOP national vote showing. So this is the House popular vote. Currently, the GOP is ahead by 5 points. I expect that to shrink a little bit as some of the California results come in. But that, if let's just say he wins, the House GOP wins by more than 2.6 points, it will be the best House GOP showing in a presidential year in the House popular vote since 1928. If there's any viewer out there who is that old, God bless you. But the bottom line is it was probably the best House GOP national vote showing during most of our viewers' lifetimes.
There are
in a
people.
Presidential year.
Yeah, okay. It's good to see you, Harry. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless you, John.
Yeah, there you have it. Trump victory, in one word, was historical.
Wow.
Yeah, he executed what can only be described as a clean sweep. As of this recording, 312 electoral votes to Vice President Harris's 226. He flipped all of the swing states, Georgia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Arizona. They're still counting, but he is in the lead and is projected to win. He won the popular vote by over 32 million. I need a fact check on that. I'm not entirely sure what the exact number is on winning the popular vote. And like the lady said,
you said 32 million? I don't think it's that much. I think it's more like 5.
I could be wrong on that.
I think it's more like 5 million.
Maybe we could pull up that stat there, or maybe that's the total that he got. I would need that to be fact checked for sure. But
yeah, last stat I saw was 71 million for
71,
Trump.
Okay.
And about 67 or so for Harris.
Okay, so the margin was about 5-6 million. Okay, and the GOP's got the Senate. They look like they're going to take the House or take the majority in the House, although the race is still on for the House. And man, it's incredible. Right now, the GOP has 212 seats to the Democrats, 201 seats. And like Sam mentioned off the recording, the requirement is 218 to win the majority there. So you can't call it anything other than a sweep. He took everything.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, it's kind of hoping that we would have a result like this. I'm not too surprised that things have turned out in a more conservative way this time round. I think the government has just been too, overbearing. I don't think that people like to see all this warfare against Trump. And then the shooting, when somebody tried to shoot him, did shoot him, but it wasn't fatal. I think that also helped Trump as well. So.
Yeah, I have another one here because one of the big turnout for Trump was their Hispanic votes. Here's a clip about that.
And finally, we talk a lot about these different demographics and these assumptions of where they're going to go. Latinos in Texas.
This is from The View, actually, so be ready for the cringe.
A district that's 97% Latino went 75 percentage points for Donald Trump. Why?
Misogyny.
It's on the border. The border crisis is on their doorstep.
So,
and they were begging people to care about it for years. We need to take some lessons.
That's what that was.
The lessons are not.
Knock. Who's there? Oh my gosh, it's Whoopi.
She is unbearable, that woman, Sunny Hostin. I didn't even have to see the clip to know that was her. It's misogyny. No, knucklehead, it's the border. And it's all of this leftist ideology being pushed on people that are traditionally very conservative.
But it's interesting here, though, because this is a county or area in Texas that's on the border that's majority Hispanic, and they went 75% for Trump. Usually, and I'm an immigrant, they usually think that, I don't know, I guess this only happened in the U.S., but they seem to think that because you fall in certain brackets that you're always in line with whatever that bracket does. And I'm like, people that come across the border legally, people that are in the country legally, and they're immigrants, they're frustrated that people are walking across illegally and getting, debit cards,
of benefits,
cell phones, apartments.
Some of them were even protesting in the streets in New York about their so-called benefits. They're not even legal, and they were protesting for their benefits.
You know what the money I had to send to the DHS, USCIS to be in the country legally? And these people are just coming across the border and getting all these things. I probably should go down to Mexico and walk across. They probably treat me better. But anyway, Sam.
Yeah, so I did, before the election, I asked a whole bunch of my friends. At our church, we have like an English-speaking side, and then we also have a Spanish-speaking side. And I was just kind of curious where the Spanish-speaking side was feeling. A lot of them are from Mexico, South America. And I know that some of them are citizens now, and we're going to be voting. So I was asking them, where they stood, and they were very hesitant to tell me where they stood on the election. But ultimately, what I got from them was that they were all going to be voting for Trump, and they had a lot of concerns about the other side. And from what I was hearing from them, the two biggest issues that they had, one was, first thing that they mentioned to me was money. And they all said pretty much the same thing. So they all seem to have money as the number one priority. Things are so expensive for them. And I know stuff is expensive for me too. They wanted to go back to a better economy like what we had with Trump. And then the other thing that they mentioned, not all of them mentioned it, but none of them spoke against this. Those that spoke on this topic spoke for this being an issue, and that is a lot of crime that has increased in their neighborhood. And from what I gathered, it's related to an increase in illegal immigration and a lack of law enforcement. And it seemed like they really wanted that to be dealt with as well. So that's interesting, but that's what I'm hearing from, Hispanic communities. So
yeah, I have another clip that I want to play, but I'll plug this in because I'm not hearing a whole lot about this. But Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, I think the one who started the busing, and I think Governor DeSantis of Florida also did some busing as well. That was ingenious. Because I'm not even talking about spiritual, I'm not talking about politically. Because what that did was change the border state to the entire country. So when you have places like New York bursting at the seams, Chicago bursting at the seams, and all these...
Our area here is busting at the seams, yep.
Oh, wow.
So now they say, we're a sanctuary city. And now they have all these people coming in on them, and their budget starts straining and all this stuff. It forced them to say, hey, we are feeling the effects too. And I think that was ingenious when it comes to immigration. I don't know if morally it was the best thing to do, but politically, that really, really hampered the Democrats because it says, hey, you want them, you love them, here are they. And when they start affecting every aspect of their life, from their finances to crime to bringing people into their neighborhoods, it really, really, really worked. All right, here's another one. Again, be ready for the cringe. This is Sonny Hostin again. And woman and abortion issues. At least I think this one is Sonny Hostin.
I want to dig further into the demographics because black women tried to save this country. Again, last night, 92% of black women voted for the vice president. You have Latinas in the 70 percentile voting for the vice president.
92% of black women.
Okay.
That's really not something we should be proud of, but go ahead.
I don't know if I buy that stat. Why do they say 92%?
Of black women. I think that's the stat I've seen. About 92% of black women voted.
Where does that come from?
Black men was 71% or so.
What's that?
92% of black women voted for Harris, and I think 71% of black men voted for Harris. Which is interesting because every time Trump ran, he gained in with a black man, but it seems like he's not gaining with a black woman.
I guess that's interesting to me. I'm not so sure that I buy that stat. I wish I had reached out to more people. Half of my family is conservative and half of my family is Democrat. And I'm just thinking, I know a lot of women that were not at all excited about Kamala Harris. And I'm pretty sure they did not vote for her. So I do know a lot of black women that were for Kamala as well. That's just interesting. I don't really know that I buy that. But anyway, I have no way of proving one way or the other. So all right. It's interesting.
Well, here is Sonny. Continues.
What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men, actually, voting more for him. And you have, and black men was not the story. We're not the story here because they voted almost 80% for the vice president. Right. So why do you think that uneducated white women voted against their reproductive health freedoms? And why do you think Latino men voted in favor of someone that's going to says he's going to deport the majority of his community?
White women like being called uneducated white women. I think the economy matters, national security matters. But when you put people in these boxes, I think that's a takeaway from this race.
We have to look at the demographics of it.
See here, why is it because they didn't vote for Harris, they must be uneducated? That's just cringe, man. Come on.
They all think like that. Brian Krasenstein went online after the election and put a statistic up that demonstrated that educated white people voted for Harris, or not even white people, just educated people were on trend to vote primarily for Harris, while uneducated people voted for Trump. And the implication there, the idea there, was similar to Hillary's deplorables comment, to Joe Biden's garbage comment. And when Stephen A. Smith went on The View, I think it was the day after, maybe 2 days after elections, and he talked about the legitimate reasons why the Democrats lost the election, Sunny Hostin says, well, these people need to be educated. And Stephen A. Smith fires back and says, hey, these people are salt of the earth people. They're working all of these hours. They're taking care of their families. They're not vested in paying attention to politics as much as we are for a living, like the pundits are for a living. And then she retorts back and says, oh, well, they need to educate themselves. They need to pay attention. Maybe they need to listen to the news when they go to work. There's this whole idea of looking down your nose at the average person in the United States. And there's this stuffiness as we're the educated ones. We're the ones on TV. And you need to listen to us. And I think that America gave them a very emphatic, go kick rocks. We don't care what you think. While you're complaining about these issues that we don't care about, eggs are $18 a box in the store. We don't care about what you Hollywood celebrities say about how we should vote, about who we are, whether or not we're garbage or deplorable or whatever. And America let them know. And they are on TV and they just can't handle it. They don't know what to do with themselves. Oh my goodness me, what happened? Well, America just told you what happened.
Well, Sam, that's a wrap. That's a wrap, Sam. We can end the podcast right here.
And, I agree. And I think that maybe the Democrats should have listened to one of their heroes from 20 years ago, Bill Clinton, when he said that it's the economy. That's the number one issue, And so they should have focused more on helping our economy do better, because if that's not going good, then we don't really care about the other issues, at least that's the theory that Bill Clinton proposed. And I think that these election results might support that idea, at least in part,
Yeah.
So.
As the saying goes, is the economy stupid? Sonny also mentioned the fact that 92% of black women voted for Trump. Well, Jay,
I still don't buy that stat.
For Harris, yeah.
Yes, 92% voted for her. So, Jay, you're a woman. You are a black woman. Why is it that you are not among your group at 92%?
Okay, there are many reasons why I did not vote for Harris. The overwhelming majority of women, black women in this country, voted for Harris simply because she is black adjacent. She's black-ish. And she's not even fully black.
We'll talk about that later.
Even Trump made fun of her and said, I didn't know she was black until this election. And he's got a point. She was running as Indian the whole time. Okay, my conspiracy theory, right? Most of the women were voting on an emotional base. I'm voting for her because I want to crack that glass ceiling and I want my daughters to see that anything is possible and us women got to stick together. There's this whole idea. It's no different from when Biden said to Charlemagne, if you're not voting for me, you're not black. Well, the women were like, if you're a woman, you have to vote for Kamala Harris because that's the only thing that matters is the type of gonads that you have, because women are that level of intelligent when it comes to the issues. And that's condescending. That's insulting. You're talking to someone who refused to continue and refused to receive a commission in the United States Marine Corps because her boss told her that she was going to have an easier time getting the commission because she's a woman and because she's black. I found that insulting and I got out. One of the main reasons I got out. When you talk to people like that, you're telling them, hey, I don't trust you to understand what the issues are. I don't trust you to have a moral compass. I don't trust you to be an independent thinker. You have to think like us, and this is who you have to vote for. And I am disappointed to hear that 92% of black women voted for her. And I can't say it's on what policy did she put out there that was any indication that things are going to get better. I can't think of a single policy that would have benefited women, black women. And Sunny Hostin is being, and all of The View are being disingenuous when they're talking about the issue of abortion. They make it sound as though the abolition of Roe means that everyone is going to have to die giving childbirth now and that there are no options for women. And all Roe did was send the issue of abortion back to the states where it belongs. Now, if you ask me, I am a Christian. I don't think there's any place for abortion in this country, but the people have spoken. The Supreme Court looked at it and saw that it was not good law. They overturned it. Now it's back to the states. But because they're talking to people as though they're low
IQ,
low IQ voters.
Garbage,
deplorable. Hey, you have to vote for your freedom. So many people took to TikTok the following day or in the waking hours when we realized that Trump had swept everything. Oh, my daughters have less freedom than I do. And they're crying and just snotting everything on TikTok. They set up cameras to cry, to show the world how virtuous they are. They're so disappointed that we didn't vote in a black woman into the office. Stop talking down to people. We're not idiots. We can see what's happening. If 92% of black women voted for Kamala Harris, I would like to think that there was some sort of substantive policy that they were going for. But we all know that they were all marching in lockstep for the Democratic machine, for all of these talking points, for the platform. They were not voting because she had anything substantive to offer. I'm done ranting now. I apologize to everyone that had to sit there and listen to me.
All right, Sam, I'm going to bring you in on a similar question. So 92% of black women went for Harris, and I think it was like...
Don't buy it.
52...
I don't buy it.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, the 92 thing is really bugging me. And I decided to pull up some election stats. This is more local, but I was just looking at Mobile County and how our vote was for Trump versus Kamala, and then what our race demographics are. And at least in Mobile County, I don't buy 92% of black women at all.
Well, that's nationwide, though. Mobile is as red as the as the blood. So
yeah. Mobile is not as red as you might think it is. I mean, we have
Alabama.
What's that?
Alabama. Look in LA County or something. She probably got closer to 100% of the black women vote in LA County.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, we have drag queen story time in Mobile, Alabama. Mobile is a more liberal part of Alabama.
Well, that's true because it's one of the major cities. So, yeah, that would be true.
Yeah. And of course, you have Montgomery and that area is more liberal as well. Birmingham. I mean, for goodness sake, my congresswoman or congressman, and now I need to check, is a Democrat now in Mobile, Alabama.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. At least the numbers weren't finalized, but he was in the lead. I think it was a he. Let me go back to the House race, double check. I didn't vote for him. I voted for Caroline Dobson, but I believe she lost to the Democrat.
Well, while you do that, let me show the question I want to ask you because it's related. So what you said about 52% of white women went for Harris, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Do you buy that one? 52% of white women went for Harris? Or, well, no, 52 actually went for Trump because they're uneducated.
I can buy that a lot better than I can buy the 92 black women. I just pulled up some stats on CNN, and they're saying for the 2024 election, they did some exit polls, and for them, they have 84%. Is that right?
Black combined would be 80-something, which is big.
Black women is what I'm seeing.
Oh, cool.
So, because the 92% pre-vote poll, see, what I suspect is, I mean, I can buy that a lot of black women voted Democrat. I can buy that. But I don't buy that it's as high as 92. The thing I'm thinking is maybe some of the black women aren't answering the calls. I know when I get pollster calls, I don't answer, especially not if it has anything to do with Trump, because I just don't want to deal with whoever is calling, and I don't really feel like giving them information either.
Yeah.
And then also the other thing is there's a lot of peer pressure, right, in the black community. So if you say, oh, you're going to go with the conservative side, then you may get yelled at. And a lot of people don't want to hear it. I think a lot of us guys don't mind a fight as much as women. So I think we've been hesitant, those of us who are conservative, but, you know, maybe with Trump, we've been a little bit more vocal. But the women, I don't think they want that fight, even if they are going to vote for Trump. And so I think that skews the numbers higher than they actually are. I don't buy that 92. And if I'm understanding the exit poll information from CNN, it looks to me like CNN thinks it's about 10 percentage points lower.
Okay.
10 percentage points lower. So just interesting.
So what about the 52% of white women that went for Trump? Do you think that it's because they're uneducated? I know Jerry already gave us that rant, but I'm going to throw you over. You might know something about the white women vote that we don't, so.
You know, I mean, I think education does play a role in this, but I don't think it's the way that they're spinning it. I think education plays a role because the greater your education, perhaps the more opportunities you have to make money. And the more money you have, the less this terrible economy, you know, the less obvious its effect is on you. You have more margin, is what I'm saying. So, like for us, under Trump, we were paying X dollars a week in groceries. Well, under Biden, we're paying about 1.9x for groceries. And we did have another kid. So from Trump to Biden, we have a 3-year-old added to our mix and an 8-month-old. So, of course, that's going to bump our prices up a little bit, but it shouldn't be that much, It shouldn't be almost double. And so I know for me, I'm feeling it. Thankfully, I think you and I were doing okay. But if I had a lower education, then we would really be struggling right now. And the economy would be even more important to me. And I think I'd be even more likely to vote for somebody that I thought would provide economic relief. And I think Trump's made a good argument just based off of the last 4 years that we had with him.
Here's another way to spin it, Sam. If we looked at the number of people that voted for Harris as a function of their college education, could we also say that it's more likely that those that have gone to college are kind of indoctrinated into the leftist or into at least left ideology? Because I think one of the things that these past 4 years has revealed is the level of ideological takeover of the academic institutions. They're churning out graduates that are just indoctrinated. I'm repeating myself here, but it's amazing how they think, the group think and all that sort of thing. Could it also be a function of that? Could that also be what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely. I think you have the indoctrination and then maybe life choices that go along with that.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious how many college educated women, like if you look at how many children come from college educated women versus less educated women. Sounds kind of funny, but I'm thinking about many of the college educated girls that I know, and there's plenty of exceptions, but there does seem to be a higher prevalence of college educated girls that have more cats and dogs and less children. So, and even those that have children, maybe they only have 1 or 2 versus other women that might have a lot more. I don't know. That's an interesting question. I try to think about like my own circumstances. In my case, my wife does have a degree. And in fact, she's got better than college degree. And she has a lot of kids. We have a lot of kids together. So she would be an exception to that. But I'm thinking of other girls and a lot of college educated girls that I can think of. They don't have much in the way of kids. So I don't know. I don't know if that's just anecdotal or if that's a reality. But that would be interesting to look at.
Yeah, definitely. But to that point, though, because I think that your wife, just like my wife, even though they have college degree and probably could be very successful in corporate America, they have chosen to prioritize raising the kids over, working for the boss and, advancing their interests of the boss. They chose to put that in their family. And the Democrats turned their nose down on something like that because, why would you waste your education? You and I in the corporate world, you and I are software engineers. I've spoken to married women at work. I used to carpool with a married woman. She had 2 kids and she was like, she had a master's degree and she said, I spent a lot of money trying to get the education and I want to work. And that's the overall idea that she had. I put all this effort in to get this, so I want to work. And she wasn't necessarily leftist in a sense. She is Muslim, but she wasn't like, practicing fundamental Muslim, but she's raised in a Muslim household. And that's what she was telling me, And there are other ladies that I work with. Actually, I used to couple with 2 ladies. The other one wasn't married, but they expressed the same thing. They really want to see their career grow. They really want to advance. And the one that wasn't married, she didn't have any kids. At this point, I would say she's probably in her mid-30s and still don't have any kids. And
yeah,
her parents are not fine with that, but she advancing in my career. And also I saw stats that say it's not just educated women, it's educated women living in certain areas of the country. And let's say certain area of the country, the richer areas of the country. Those are the ones that went heavily for Harris. Because I'm not quite sure when she said uneducated exactly what you mean. She could mean that they don't have a college degree. That doesn't mean you're uneducated.
Educated, right.
But my gut feeling is saying it's not whether they have a college degree or not. It's more or not is whether or not they are educated in their mind on the issues of the day. Because how can they be educated on the issues of the day and dare vote against Harris? That's the impression I'm getting. How can they know that Donald Trump is Hitler and a threat to democracy and everything they say about him? How can they know all that? How can they be educated in all that and still not vote for him? I think that's what they're saying more than, they don't have a college degree, even though maybe a college degree might play a role. All right, I have another one. here is a woman, and she said she voted because of the issue of abortion. Now, I think she is one of those election analysts or something like that. She went to the store to buy champagne before the election results came out to rejoice. And this is what she had to say to the clerk.
Okay, so we're closing in on almost 5 p.m. Eastern time, and I've been tracking everything that's been going on across the country today. And my most important encounter was when I went out to get my champagne. I was talking to the guy in the store, of course, asking him, did he vote? And he said he did early voting, and he asked me if I early voted. And he asked me, why I was getting the champagne. And I said, because I'm going to be toasting Madam President tonight. And he just looked at me with kind of like a smirk on his face. And I said, she's going to win this, right? And he says, oh, well, it's very, very close. And I said, no, it's not. He says, well, what do you mean? I said, no, it's not. The women of America are making their voices heard. Reproductive rights is what it all comes down to. And the women are voting in numbers relative to men that are unbelievable. She's won this. And I said to him, she's going to take every one of the swing states plus Iowa. And he said, oh, but the numbers are so close. I said, I'm a political analyst. I'm telling you right now, the numbers are there. She's taking this election. And then I said to him, you realize, and he didn't tell me who he voted for, but of course I knew. And I said, you do realize you wasted your vote, right? And I didn't care. And I walked out with my bottle of champagne and happily walked home. Bye-bye.
I wonder where she is today.
She drowned herself. She drowned herself in her champagne. She drowned her sorrows into her champagne, cackling like her preferred candidate. She drowned her sorrows in her champagne.
She probably had to go back and get some hard liquor, honestly.
I don't know, Sam. I may have to cut that one out, Sam.
He went back and got vodka. She just couldn't handle it. Oh,
you maggots and garbage people. Wow. Anyways, back to the serious part. So she said that women was going to be voting more on abortion and reproductive rights. That's why Kamala was going to win. Jay, now tell me, you did vote to protect reproductive rights, did you?
No, actually, I think the Democrats made a terrible mistake on making this an issue. It galvanized the fringe elements of their base. It didn't really move the needle among regular white women. They thought that it would, but it really didn't make much of a difference. It seems that, and I'm no political analyst, I'm sure that Wine Mom over there is more of a political analyst than I am, but it seemed like Kamala Harris, oh, I'm sorry, that was deplorable of me. Kamala Harris underperformed with the demographics that are traditionally Democratic, white women, Black voters. Where she underperformed, Trump made modest gains compared to the previous elections, and that was enough to put him over. The white women, surprised, they go to the grocery store more often than they go to the abortion clinics. Who would have known? The economy was the main issue, I would imagine. And
is the economy stupid?
Yeah, and many people... Oh, I just lost my train of thought.
Yeah, while you think about that, I'll say this, though, because I was reading an article by, I think it's NBC, and of course, NBC is no friend of Trump.
Right.
But you remember that rally Trump had in the Bronx in New York? And a lot of the Democrats were complaining and saying, oh, why is he here? This is blue country, or whatever the case may be. But they made a distinction that I was reading, and this coming out, this is actual stats. I should have kept the article, but now they're saying what Trump did was ingenious because Trump was able to tap into something that the Democrat Party couldn't tap into.
What was that?
It was that even within these communities, they say most of the people that attended that rally it had in the Bronx were minorities. And minorities were swinging heavily towards Donald Trump. Of course, he didn't win the Bronx. Of course not. But he gained so much votes from there. That's helped propel him over into the popular vote. So he going into the heart of blue country and having rallies and still join all these people. Look, just before the election, he filled the Madison Square Garden in New York.
Yep.
There's no way he was going to win New York, but you can see. And of course, is the economy stupid? And the other thing that I read in an article that stood out as well was that a lot of folks that were Democrats are weary of the LGBTQIA movement, especially the trans movement, the ideology that they push in the schools.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A lot of these mothers want their boys to grow up to be men and want the girls to grow up to be women. And they're pushing a lot of this ideology. And Trump had a campaign ad that talked about Kamala is for they, them, I am for you.
Yeah.
And statistic from that ad said that resonated with people way more than any other ads. So people, you can see, is the economy. Sam, you talk about how your grocery bill got. It's no different for us. Our family is about the same size. I wrote a budget software that I use to manage my home. I can go back and show you exactly every year on the Trump, every year on the Biden, what my grocery bill was for that year. Complete year. I can pull reports on the entire stuff. Yes, I know I geek out on it, but yes, I can even probably pull up some charts and graphs or whatever I want to pull up from the software I wrote. I can show you how my grocery bill go up. And not only that, even to get it more personal, I can show you how many months my wife went over the grocery budget because things were so expensive. So
right.
It's economy, it's gas prices. Since COVID, I didn't have to go into the office. That's the reason why my gas bill didn't go up, because I didn't have to fill my tank so much because I wasn't driving into the office. But gas prices went up. So you have the economy, immigration issues that we talk about, that too was an issue. All these were laid at the feet of Kamala Harris because she's tied to Biden. And not only that, we had 4 years of Trump that we can compare to 4 years of Biden. When was the last time we had that? I don't know. But that was significant because people remember the prices of gas. I remember gas was 99 cents for a week or so here on the Trump. Gas was $1 or something when Trump left office here. Less than $1.50 when Trump left office. And in 2-3 months under Biden, I remember gas went all the way up almost $4 here. Because
the first thing he did was sign an executive order to block one of the pipelines, if I remember correctly.
And not only that, the fracking and all this stuff that Trump was allowing, all those went away. Of course, that's going to hit in the pocket of the small man. But I have more to say on that, but I'm going to let you come in, Sam, and then we're going to go into a break.
Yeah, so 2 things popped into my mind. But first off, I wanted to get back to the education thing real quick. I did look it up. Birth rate statistics in the United States. This is 2023 by educational attainment of mother. And it does look like, maybe not by as much as I thought, but it does look like less educated women do reproduce a little bit more. And in this case, I'm looking at women with partial college attendance or less, right? So like if you look at women with a bachelor's degree, for every 1,000 women, you have 55 births. And then graduate degree or professional degree, so graduate or above, it's 61 births for every 1,000 mother. So that's like, well, that's bigger numbers. It seems to be going up. But then if you look at partial college attendance, it's 50 births per 1,000. And these are separate bins, so they're exclusive to each other. And then mothers that graduated high school but did not attend college, 58 births per 1,000. And then less than high school is 32 births per 1,000. So if you take partial college and less, that's what we're looking at, something like 150 births per 1,000 versus about 110 births per 1,000 for college degree and above. So it looks like less educated women do have more children just by a little bit. Well, I mean, we're talking about 30% more children.
Oh, wow.
So they have less money and they have a larger burden, more children to take care of. But then you brought up Wine Mama and her celebrating prematurely Kamala Harris's victory. She was strong on that. What kind of struck me on that video, I did see it before this podcast. 2 things kind of jumped out at me. One, why does she care about quote unquote reproductive rights? Or in this case, it's really the ability to kill your child before you give birth to it. Why does she care about that? This woman seems to be older, and I don't expect her to be pregnant anytime soon. I don't even know if it's possible because of...
What do you mean misogynistic, Sam?
Well, she's older. I think the clock has probably run out for her.
I would agree with you.
So I'm not trying to be mean or anything. So I don't know why it's an issue for her. Maybe she might claim, well, it's because of a friend of hers or something like that.
Her granddaughter.
Her fellow woman. What's that?
Her granddaughter or daughter.
Yeah, maybe that's her argument. But then the other thing that kind of struck me is, okay, even for these women who can get pregnant and they may be worried about it. I mean, obviously, of course, as Christians, we believe that, we should behave morally. And so sex should be just in marriage. And so getting pregnant shouldn't be that big of a deal for a lot of us because we should have support in the form of a spouse. But I guess for me, the thing is like, it's kind of crazy to me that all these women are saying they want the right to kill their own child. And it made me think of a verse in the Bible, 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1-5. And it says, "This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come." Verse 2, "For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents." We see a lot of that. "Unthankful, unholy." Verse 3, "without natural affection." So that's kind of interesting. "Truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good." And it just goes on and on and on. Verse 4 gives more description, and verse 5 gives more as well. Without natural affection. You know, I've kind of wonder if two categories are covered with that. You know, one might be the whole LGBTQ, because men aren't naturally supposed to like other men. That's unnatural. And same thing for women. But then also you look at people who, some of them don't mind and others seem to be rather gleeful to kill their own children. And to me, that's a lack of affection that you would expect somebody to naturally have. You think somebody would naturally care about their own children, you know? Or I saw a video of a guy who was crying because he voted for Kamala Harris for the sake of his daughters. He wanted them to have the right to kill their own babies. And for me, it's like, what kind of a grandpa thinks like that, you know? This is our would-be grandpa, but I guess he doesn't want to be a grandpa because he wants his grandbabies killed, or he wants that possibility anyway. It's just so bizarre, but I think the Bible says that this would happen towards the end days.
Yeah, I think one of the big things here as well is that, at least I get the impression that Kamala Harris wanted us to believe a lie, meaning that she constantly tells us that Trump was Hitler, he's a threat to democracy, he wanted to take abortion rights away. And of course, none of us here are for abortion. But as Jay said earlier, the only thing the Supreme Court did was send it back to the states. And they're making it seem like, oh, there are women dying and stuff like that. Except for a few states in the country, to be honest. Most states, you can still have an abortion up to a certain amount of weeks. So basically what you're saying, unless it is unbridled, it's unhindered, and they can have it up to 9 months or whatever, 10 months or whatever, just before delivery. It seems like that's basically what they're saying, because majority of the states, they can still have it. No states in the country will refuse to intervene for ectopic pregnancy. None. So what they're saying here is that they want us to believe the lie. But I will say this, that they will go into break. I think a demographic that would look over, I think Jay mentioned this to me when we were talking earlier before the podcast, was the Amish. The Amish came out in force in Pennsylvania and other places because they're feeling it too. You're talking about when you take off the Amish, you know, you lose. It's over. Because, you know, they're coming out somewhat strong and going like, they're going to vote for the Amish man because for the same reason, the economy, stupid as the famous quote goes, and whatever else that affect their communities, you know? So anyways.
Well, the Amish were being targeted by, I want to say, Biden bureaucrats in the FDA, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. With the meat that we're selling in the community. Yep. I remember that.
Dairy as well?
Yeah, dairy, yep.
Thrown in jail.
Yep.
So, yeah, I don't think that really made them like Biden or Kamala very much.
Yep, that's true. All right, we'll come out the other side. We'll continue this discussion. You're listening to the Removing Barriers podcast. We're sitting down with Sam, and we are talking about the demographics of Trump's victory. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for a consistent and reliable place to get all your Christian materials? Try ChristianBook.com. Started from humble beginnings in 1978, ChristianBook.com now offers a wide range of books, CDs, DVDs, homeschooling, and church supplies, plus more. So whether you are a parent, a homeschooler, a pastor, or a layperson, ChristianBook.com can be a one-stop shop for all your needs. Click the link in the description section below and check out the vast array of Christian materials ChristianBook.com has to offer. Do you have the desire to earnestly contend for the faith which was once delivered unto the saints? Answers in Genesis can help. They provide biblically sound books, CDs, DVDs, homeschooling materials, VBS materials, online courses, digital downloads, and the Answers magazine, and more. plus tickets to the Creation Museum and Ark Encounter. Go to the Answers bookstore by clicking the link in the description section below, so you too can be ready to give an answer to anyone who asks the reason of the hope that is in you.
All right, Mr. Sam. So we have been talking about the demographics of the Trump victory. We see that blacks as a whole, which basically was the only demographics that went heavily towards Kamala Harris. However, Trump did gain about, I think 23% of the black vote, which is tremendous. That is a landslide when it comes to black people voting for the Republican Party. So even though Kamala Harris still won majority of the black vote, Trump getting 20-something% is crazy because Obama got 90-something%. Hillary got, I think with Hillary only got like 8%. I think every other demographics were somewhat leaning Trump, but it wasn't as big in terms of, I think the Asian community was 50-something%, maybe Trump, low 50s. The white vote is normally split, but white men especially went for Trump heavily over Kamala Harris. I think also, if you go with the other demographics out there, but I want to talk about black men for a little bit here because Obama did give this speech to black men because he figured that they didn't want to vote for Kamala Harris. So I'm going to play this clip, and then we're going to talk about why the black men did not vote at the level they voted for Obama.
Communities is that we have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running.
No, you see here, I wonder if he sat down and asked himself, why am I not seeing the turnout for Kamala Harris as they turned out for me? But anyways, I'll let him finish.
Now, I also want to say that that seems to be more pronounced with the brothers. So if you don't mind, just for a second, I'm going to speak to the elder and say that when you have a choice that is this clear, when on the one hand you have somebody who grew up like you, knows you, went to college with you, understands the struggles and pain and joy that come.
Otherwise, vote along racial lines. But continue, Obama.
From those experiences. You said to work harder and do more and overcome and achieves the second highest office in the land.
I guess that's the end of it. Anyways, let me show it to you, Sam, since we know you are a black man born and raised in the United States of America. Firstly, Obama was talking to someone like you. You're turning against Kamala Harris. Firstly, how do you feel about that? Obama telling that to you? And then why do you think that black men did not vote for Kamala Harris at the level they voted for Obama?
You know, the first thing that I think jumps out at me is Obama, I don't like his tone, right? So let's say if somebody came to me and said the same thing, you know, about a subject that I agreed with, but they had that kind of a tone, I don't like it.
You're a grown man. You don't want people talking to you like that.
Yeah. And I don't think other black guys like it either.
What was his tone, Sam, if you could elucidate for knuckleheads like me? Was he condescending or was he just patronizing? Was he annoying? What was the tone that you didn't like so much?
Wow.
For me, I would say patronizing fit the bill more than condescending.
Patronizing, or almost like he feels like he has the right to tell me how to vote.
Yep.
Right?
You hit the nail on the head right there.
Yeah. So instead of that, he should try a more persuasive tact. Like, hey, you know, I noticed that black brothers aren't as excited about Kamala as they should be. Let me explain to you, like, why you should be excited about Kamala Harris, right? Or even if you can't say that, then maybe Kamala Harris is not the most exciting candidate, but Trump is going to be more of a problem for you, you know, and point out where Trump is deficient and Kamala Harris is better. Do something persuasive, you know? Don't try to like bludgeon and tell me. It almost is like a father scolding his son, which a father may have the right to do, but Obama's not my father,
Right.
and I'm a grown man, right? So I don't want to hear him talking to me like that. And I don't think a lot of guys wanted to hear it. So yeah, I don't think that works very well. I tried to wonder, why would Obama take that tack? And half of me wonders if he's going back to his years as a community leader or something like that. Maybe, you know, if he comes across as a brother talking to another brother, he may be given a little bit more leeway, but he's no longer that. Now he's more of a political elite, if you will.
Yep.
And so even the direction that this attack, for lack of a better word, or like him saying, hey, look, brothers, we need to do this. Like, it's no longer coming from a fellow brother at our level, but it's coming from someone on high, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So he has to take a different tack. In my opinion, if you want to be more effective, he needed to take a different tack.
Yeah, for me, I'm stubborn. So if you want to convince me of something, there are two things that you have to do. Either prove it to me from scriptures that the Bible says something and I'm going against it. You can prove it. Hopefully my love for God and obedience to his word will persuade me to change. The other thing is you're going to have to use reason and logic. If you come to me the way Obama came to these guys, it's not going to work. What's the reason and what's the logic that you're going to use for me to change my mind on something that I'm already convinced of? Telling me because she's black, she went to HBCU, she grew up the way I grew up, and all these things is not reason and logic. You're asking me to basically ignore everything else and vote based upon identity, which I think maybe based on the election results that the country is somewhat moving away from identity and rally on the red, white, and blue, I guess. But anyway, go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's another thing that you bring up when you talk about identity. Obama was saying that Kamala Harris grew up like us and she knows what it's like to be a black person in America. And first of all, I have to say that being a black person in America, you know, being a person in any country has its pluses and minuses. But I think that overall, my experience in America, while I've had some negative experiences, my experience in America has been overall positive, and I'd much rather be here than anywhere else. You know, at this point in time, America has overall done more good for me than it has bad. So I don't like the idea of being ungrateful about the nation that you're in, especially when we've had such a good experience. And my parents went through the whole civil rights thing, and I think they would feel the same way. They'd much rather be here in America than somewhere else. My mom went through integration in schools and whatnot when they had to have I think it was the National Guard brought into Alabama. My mom was right there. She grew up in Alabama and went through all that. But I think the thing that I don't like also, and maybe not every black guy feels this way because I'm not sure that all of us have the information, but Kamala Harris did not grow up the same way that we did. You know, most black folks had more of a church background. And as far as I can tell, Kamala Harris, most of the pictures that I see from her younger life, religious pictures, it's in a Hindu temple. And she grew up, as far as I'm aware, identifying with Hinduism. And I'm not knocking the Hindus. I'm a Christian and I believe in Christ. So I'm not a proponent of Hinduism. But me bringing this up is not me trying to attack them. But what I'm saying is she didn't grow up in the same culture, right? And then we look at her actions when she was a prosecutor in California, and she went after a lot of black folks. And that all by itself doesn't mean that she doesn't care about black people. But then I look at what did she go after them for, right? And I think about the mother that she locked up for truancy. And the mother had brought this up over and over again. But as far as I'm aware, the mother wasn't truant, but the daughter was. The daughter wasn't attending, as far as I understand, because of some health condition or something like that. Mm-hmm. And yet Kamala Harris gets this mom locked up for her daughter not attending school, even though she knew that there was some explanation for the daughter not being there. And to me, it looks like she locked up a lot of folks, which a lot of them happen to be black, because she wanted her numbers as a prosecutor higher. And so I think a lot of black folks that have looked at stuff like that, you know, that doesn't help them want to vote for her. And that doesn't make us feel like she knows what our experience is like. She's part of the problem, right? And then if you look at Kamala Harris's heritage, she talks about, oh, her heritage is Jamaican, and presumably that's where her black heritage comes from. But the only solid heritage that I can find of hers from Jamaica is the Irish side. And the Harris family, they, a generation or two back, they owned slaves. They had a large plantation, and then they had a lot of servants in more modern times. And those servants were black, and they weren't rich like their Irish masters, which is Kamala's family, So I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with having servants, although the slave thing I don't really like. But, she tries to say that she grew up middle class, but it turns out that her family had a bunch of servants, and then going back, they were slaves, going back in time. And she tries to claim that she's one of us, but really to me, she doesn't have the Christian background, even though she tries to play it when she goes to churches. To me, she's just kind of an act, and she tries to claim this black identity. But at least from an upbringing and a cultural standpoint, I don't think she belongs. And I don't think that other black folks are convinced that she belongs either, And there's nothing wrong with being Indian, but just don't claim that you grew up in a black culture when you did not, Just be authentic. Give us the real you, and that's much better. But if you're going to try to play as though you're something else, I think that makes people skeptical.
Yeah, I think the multiple accents you put on depends on the audience she's talking to, kind of give credence to what you're saying. But thinking about it, a lot of things Obama was saying there, I think gender did play a part in it. Did some black men decide they're not going to vote for Kamala because of her gender? I think a small percentage might say so. I think some men do not want a woman to be the commander-in-chief. And quite honestly, if I had to choose, I would prefer a man in the offices of presidency than a woman.
Yeah.
But I would not make that a top priority in my life. If a woman is running against a man, let's change Donald Trump into a woman and change Kamala into a man. And they have the same policies. I don't think a lot of men would still vote for the woman Trump on policy rather than the man Kamala because of policy. One of the things is that I think they don't look at the fact that they had poor policy. And I think that's what turn off men more than anything in that sense. I think race may have something to do with it. She grew up part of her life in Canada. We're going to discuss whether we think she's black or not. But Obama, he got 80% of the vote of black people, of black men. Kamala didn't get that. Quite honestly, I think the cackle turned off a lot of men as well. A lot of men don't want to hear women laughing like that, whatever the case may be. You can call it misogynist, and some of it might be, but I'm just being honest. Some men were going to be turned off by that. So I don't think it's race. I don't think it's gender. I don't think those are the reason why black men weren't, quote unquote, feeling her or vote for her at the same level as they did for Obama. I think it is plain and simple policy. I think also charisma has a lot to play with it too. Because Obama, he's articulate, he has charisma. You can't really say Kamala has those things. I don't think he has a lot of charisma in terms of grabbing a crowd and everything and stuff. And Obama being the first, quote unquote, to break the glass ceiling in terms of black person in the office, didn't feel it necessary to vote for Kamala just because she's black, quote unquote.
Yeah.
I think you touched on it a little bit there, Sam, but do you think either Obama or Kamala are black?
Obama, technically, I would say yes. But, for me, black is an interesting question because, to me, there are two components, at least when we're talking politics. There's two components to being black, and one is an ethnic component. And I think Obama definitely has that. But then, of course, you also have like an upbringing and a cultural component. And I think Obama has some of that. But, I've even heard a lot of black guys, even those that supported Obama, saying that he was black, but he was not the same, like he wasn't a real black man, right? And I don't know exactly what they're getting. I think it's just more of like a cultural thing. I wish I would have asked them like what they meant by that, because these were Democrats that I'm pretty sure voted for him. But like, there's something different about it. Maybe it's because he was more of an international, like his upbringing was more international. And then his stepfather, I believe his stepfather was Lolo Soetoro, who's from Indonesia. So he's not black, right? And then his mother was Irish. So his black father was out of his life for a lot of his upbringing, at least as far as I can tell. You know, Obama's childhood and upbringing is a little bit unclear, but from the little bits that, at least the official line, you know, Lolo Soetoro was his stepfather for quite a while. So for a lot of time, and he spent time in a madrasa in Indonesia and stuff like that, that upbringing is not consistent with Black American culture, you know? So, but I think that Barack Obama, for sure, I think he would resonate with Black culture more than Kamala Harris. So Kamala Harris doesn't strike me to be culturally. I don't think she has much of that. Although the one thing she has in her favor, she did go to an HBCU and she is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha, if I understand correctly. And I think that's huge, especially for Black women. I mean, that is huge. So that helps her, but that doesn't help her with Black men. So
No, that's true. Yeah, I think Black men, at least this time around, voted big time on policy. But here's how I will put that, though. Because if you ask me, is Kamala or Obama Black? I think the better question, to be honest, because I would say, well, are they Black? I would say, how do they identify? If they say they're Black, I would say they're Black, right? So I have no problem saying Kamala is a Black woman.
Well, what if Trump said he was Black?
I'm getting to that.
Okay.
Nor would I have a problem if Obama said he was Black. I think the better question is, and I think a lot of times this is what is overlooked, and I think you were getting towards it, but I don't think you quite say it as I'm going to say it, but I think you were getting to it. The better question is, are they African American? That's completely different than saying if they're Black. Because for me, I am Black, but I am not African American.
Yeah.
Because when you say African American, you're talking about not just the color of your skin. You're talking about the culture that you grew up in. You're talking about unique experiences that you have that you can identify with each other with. I don't have those unique experiences. Of course, the Caribbean had slaves just like there were slaves in the U.S., and there's a shared history there. But when slavery was abolished in the Caribbean and slavery was abolished in the U.S., there was a total different state. Basically, the white man left the Caribbean when slavery was abolished, and the Caribbean islands are 99.9% Black for most of them.
Yeah.
You know, so you're talking majority Black country. In the U.S., it's a different thing. In the U.S., you have, you know, the civil rights movement, redlining, segregation, all these things that happened in the U.S. that didn't necessarily happen in the islands. So we didn't go through all that. So I can't identify with the African-American culture. I'll put it this way. There's this YouTube channel. I'm trying to remember the name of it. If you come back to me, I'll mention it. But there's this YouTube channel that basically you have to guess the imposter. You have the group of about 6 to 8 people, and one of them will be an imposter. So they will have 7 women and 1 man pretending to be a woman, high voice and stuff like that. All of them will be blindfolded, so they can't see anybody. So they will ask questions like, tell me about how did you grow up and all that stuff. There was one, I'm sure it's still on YouTube, where they did it with Black men. And there was one white guy in the mix. This white guy was adopted by a Black family and grew up in the inner cities.
Oh, wow.
He had the talk. He had the swag. He has the culture down pat because he was raised in a Black family. And you know everything about the way we cut our hair, the things we talk about in the barbershop and everything. This white guy went all the way to the end and no one identified him as the imposter. Why? Why? Because being African American is not just about the color of your skin. It's about the culture you grew up in. My wife, Jay, she can talk about it if she wants to. She was born and raised in this country, but she doesn't identify as African American because her family is from the Caribbean and they raised her with a Caribbean culture. I think she said it on the podcast before. Her mom didn't want her to even associate with African Americans for whatever reason. So I guess my point is they rant and rage about whether Kamala is Black, whether she's Black. But they never once said, is she African American? Which is what she's not. This is not a dig against her because as I said before, I am not. I'm Black and no one can look at me and think that I'm not Black. My mom is Black. My dad is Black. As far as I know, go way back. My maternal great-grandmother came from Peru. So There's definitely some Hispanic line in my blood. And again, no one will look at me and will think that I'm not Black. But I'm not African American. And I think that's where they're missing the mark because they're saying, hey, is she Black? Is she Black? Well, yeah, her dad most likely is Black from Jamaica and her mom is Indian. So
there's some dispute about that. Actually.
Well, there might be, but since he's from Jamaica, I'm going to give him the Black side. That's my Caribbean sister.
Well, believe it or not, Her father had an interview back in the 70s. I wish I could find it. Ever since this has become a hot topic, I've had a hard time finding it. But he was interviewed about whether he had any African heritage, and he said no.
Well, there's some people in the islands that don't have African heritage, so that could be true. But whatever the case may be, if she wants to identify black because she has Jamaican heritage, I'll give her that. When the news and most people saying, is she black? What they're really asking, is she African American? And the truth is, she's not African American. If you want to give her black, I have no problem giving her black. In the case of Obama, I agree with everything you said with Obama. One of the reasons why Obama can come across more as African American, because Obama too, you can make the argument that he's not African American, he's black because his father being from Kenya. One of the reasons why you can give Obama more of the African American is two things. One, Obama married to Michelle Obama, which you can say, okay, being married to Michelle Obama kind of helped him have that black experience and be ingratiated into the culture. And
Good
two,
point.
Obama pulled it off much better.
Yeah.
You know, if you wanted to put it plain and blunt, he pulled it off much better. You know, Kamala accents come across to me as being forced. Obama seems to be able to, for lack of a better terminology, tap into his black side more and better than she could, if you want to put it away, or his African-American side. Go ahead.
Maybe it's because publicly Obama only has one side, whereas Kamala has many sides publicly, you know? Like when she was in California, she drummed up her Indian heritage like crazy. And then I saw her at a rally in in Texas, and she was trying to speak with a Hispanic accent. And then, of course, she goes to African-American churches, and then she tries to put on her black accent. And so, like, how are you going to keep up with all that? Eventually, your facade's going to fall apart. If not for any other reason, just that people see you keep changing wherever you are, you know? Whereas Obama, he was always, at least when it came to politics, he was always a black man, or at least tried to take on that identity.
Well, that's true.
I think it's more believable.
Yep. And in this world today, no matter where you're at, and I don't know why she did it, because no matter where you're at, whether you're in the heart of Minnesota where it might be majority white, or you might be in, you know, where Baltimore, where it's majority black, no matter where you're at, it's going to be on the internet the minute you're done, and everybody's going to hear it. So you might as well don't. She did that even with the Muslim and the Arab community in Michigan. Why would you do that? Because everybody's going to...
She did what with the Muslims? She put on a Muslim accent?
I don't think it was a Muslim accent, but she played up, you know, the war in Israel. And then when she talked to the Jews, she put on a different stuff. And I'm like, yeah, everybody is going to hear that because instantly. So whether you're in New York or Florida, you have to have the same, because you're going to be on the internet right away. But anyways.
Yeah. I'm just going through YouTube, pulling up all the videos of her different accents for me to look at later. I don't think they understand how condescending that comes across. People see that for what it is, and they're not buying it. And to reduce people to the color of their skin because you're this way, because you have this skin, you have to vote that way. And that's assuming that Black people are a monolith. I mean, we had an episode about whether or not Black people are a monolith. We're not. We described all kinds of groups of Black people and what their experiences are like in the country. And not everyone has the same experience. And to put one experience as more authentic as another is just wrong. When you have groupthink the way that the Democratic Party thinks, that's what you have to do. Because otherwise you can't corral people around this one hot button issue. You have to reduce them to something as immaterial as their skin color. Not saying that skin color is not important. I'm just saying that's not all we are.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that you have to keep in mind, and Biden made a mistake when he was running, is that Black people are not a monolith. And if you want to subset it even more, even African Americans are not a monolith. And if you want to subset it more, African American men are not a monolith.
Yeah.
They need to stop putting these people in these groups and believe because of your color of your skin that you think the same way. And I think America is probably the only country where they look at you and look at your color of your skin and believe that you have everything in common because of the color of your skin. That's not true. Should I trust someone more because they share my skin color? Absolutely not. Should I trust them less because they share my skin color? Absolutely not. Humans are humans. Stop trying to put people in the group and speak to people like they're an individual.
Yeah, you know, honestly, I have to stand up for America here just a little bit. We do, like you said, we do put each other in buckets based off of race a little bit too much. Mm. But I think it may be worse in South Africa and even worse still in China.
Well, I've never seen stats on that. But the thing is, those countries are heavily one race.
Yeah, they're quite homogenous.
Right. So,
or homogeneous. I
Really?
think is the
South
word.
Africa?
well, for most part, I think there are more black people there. Of course, there are white people there as well. But for instance, I can talk about my experience. Growing up in the islands, the first thing I see about someone was never whether they're black or white or whatever race they are. Because argument can be made because everybody was basically the same. We were all of African descent. Maybe when we see an Asian, maybe because they're so rare, well, not anymore, but there's a lot of Chinese and stuff like that have moved to the islands. But maybe when you see those, or maybe when you see, maybe, but actually maybe not, because the islands' main industry is tourism. So we have people coming from all over the world anyway, so we see all these people. But I don't remember ever focusing on the color of the person's skin. And I think that might be true in other countries like China, stuff like that, where majority of people might be of Chinese descent. They might not focus so much on race. But I've never looked up that statistics, but that's interesting. But I'm not going to trust someone or believe they have my best interest just because we share the same skin color, so to speak. But I guess we already answered this question, but what weight do you put on race when considering someone to vote for? Do you put any weight on race at all?
Wow. I guess it would depend on the topics at hand. My initial answer would be no. I don't put much weight on it, but maybe it would depend on the topics. A lot of the issues that we have in America today, I don't think we really have any. People say, well, we have race issues in America. There's always going to be some problem between one group of people and another that's going to exist at some level. So it's never going to be perfect. But I do think that, a lot of the problems that we had have been, for the most part, dealt with as far as it can be. So I don't really see why that would be a focus, going forward. For me, the biggest thing is the cultural rot in America, and then maybe also the corruption. And that's both religious as well as, other things like political corruption, people making decisions because they want to line their pockets, stuff like that. I think that's our biggest problem because, corruption is what drives us into wars right now. Corruption is causing the results of elections to be called into question. It's causing people to go to jail that don't necessarily need to be in jail, like the mother with the supposedly truant daughter. So we have our border being compromised due to corruption. So, I don't really see why race matters at all right now when it comes to electing somebody. The only reason why I would even consider race is if for some reason I felt like we had a lot of prejudice against a certain group of people, and voting for that race might help that problem. But I don't see that being anywhere near the top 10 list of issues for us right now. So why would that be something to consider, when we have much bigger problems?
It's not even the top 100 for me.
Yeah. I don't know if I would say it's not in the top 100, but it is certainly not on the top list for me. I don't even know where it would rank. I'd have to think about it.
Yeah.
But we have much, much bigger issues. So
why do you think Kamala Harris lost the election? Is it because she was black and she didn't get enough black support? Is it because she's a woman and no one wants a woman president? And there are so many other excuses that pundits the day after came up with. But what do you think is the reason she lost the election?
Well, this may not quite answer your question, but my first answer is she's a terrible candidate. And if you look at her history, national politics anyway, I don't think she's ever won a single national election. Well, she was a senator, but that's not a national election, right? That was just
her state
representing California.
She won vice presidency, so I guess that's one for her.
Yeah, but she didn't.
On the back of Biden, she won. Yeah, that's a good point. But she never won a national election of her own political muster, if you will. I mean, because when she was running for president years ago, she was running against Biden in the Democrat, primaries.
Mm-hmm.
And if I remember correctly, she was one of the first Democrats to drop out because she did so terribly. After she got murdered on stage by Tulsi Gabbard, things just didn't work out so great for her. I'm speaking figuratively here. Obviously, if she ran for president later on, she wasn't actually murdered. So, she didn't win any of the primaries. When Biden picked her, if I remember correctly, the press was going insane saying, why would he pick such a terrible She said a lot of bad things about Biden, and she didn't perform very well. And people were wondering in the national press why he would pick such a terrible candidate to be his vice president. And then she didn't win the nomination this time around. She was just appointed. And then, of course, we have all the cackling. We have her strange sayings, things like the significance about the passage of time is how significant the passage of time is, or something weird like that. And of course, she went out to North Korea, or to the DMZ rather, and she talked to our soldiers. And I don't remember what she said to our soldiers, but it was like something really insignificant and so unimportant. You could see that the soldiers are really like, why is this lady talking to us about whatever it was? I think it may have been something about NASA, and they're trying to deal with Kim Jong-un, right? Like, what do we care about NASA? Let's talk about North Korea. She just seems to not be with the people that she's trying to appeal to. She's a terrible candidate, and I don't fully understand why she's so terrible, but maybe it goes back to what you said with the whole charisma. She just doesn't have it. Some people do, some people don't, and Kamala doesn't. So I think you can wonder, how did she lose? Was it that people were misogynistic, or they didn't want, and I don't think this is a form of misogyny, but maybe they didn't want a woman president. Well, that might have been a factor. I mean, you can look at every woman candidate for president has not done very well. At the very least, they didn't win, right? So maybe you could try to make that argument. But then also when you look at like Hillary, she didn't have charisma either. And before Kamala Harris, Hillary was nicknamed the cackler, right? I don't know if y'all remember that, but then Kamala Harris came along and she stole the title. So cackling Hillary is what a lot of people called her. So I think it is harder maybe to run for president as a woman. And there may be other issues as well. But on top of all that, Kamala Harris, she just doesn't have that connection with the people that were supposed to vote for her. So they shouldn't have run her in the first place, in my opinion. They should have run somebody else. I think they would have been better off running Joe Biden, believe it or not, than Kamala. But,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I'm not quite sure Joe Biden would have done better, but that first debate, I think people would have said, hey, he's not fit to be president. But for me, Kamala turned me off when on the debate stage in the primaries in 2019, she accused Joe Biden of two things. She accused him of being basically a rapist, or at least at minimum sexual molestation. And she accused him of being a racist, right? And then she turned around and accept his call to be his vice president.
It was a debate.
And then she went on this late night show and was asked about it. And she said, as Jay just said, it was a debate, and gave a cackle. And I'm like, so when do I believe you, Kamala?
Oh, that's a good point.
When do I believe you? From that day on, she was in my no bucket, because I don't know when to believe you. Okay, so should I believe you when you're not on a debate? So should I assume everything you said in the one debate you had with Trump? Should I assume all that it was a debate? Stuff like that. You can't accuse somebody of doing the top two greatest crime in the country today. The greatest crime you can accuse a man today of, at least in the U.S., is not even murder. It is calling him a racist and say he molests women, rape, or whatever. Those two are the top. They will forgive you for murder. They're not going to forgive you those two. And you're telling me that you believe that. I guess you don't believe it really, but it was a debate. That turned me off. So I would imagine that she lost for everything you just said. But for me, that turned me off. And there's a CNN analyst. His name is Scott Jennings. He's one of the few conservative voices on CNN. This is what he said. I think he hit the nail on the head as well.
This is a mandate. He's won the national popular vote for the first time for a Republican, for the first time since 2004. This is a big deal. This isn't backing into the office. This is a mandate to do what you said you were going to do. Get the economy working again for regular working class Americans, fix immigration, try to get crime under control, try to reduce the chaos in the world. This is a mandate from the American people to do that. I think I'm interpreting the results tonight as the revenge of just the regular old working class American, the anonymous American who has been crushed, insulted, condescended to. They're not garbage. They're not Nazis. They're just regular people who get up and go to work every day and are trying to make a better life for their kids. And they feel like they have been told to just shut up.
Yeah, the Amish, as we mentioned, they're uneducated white women who are taking care of their kids at home. Anyways.
When they have complained about the things that are hurting them in their own lives. I also feel like this election, as we sit here and pour over this tonight, is something of an indictment of the political information complex. I mean, we've been sitting around here for the last couple of weeks, and the story that was portrayed was not true. I mean, we were told Puerto Rico was going to change the election. Liz Cheney, Nikki Haley voters, women lying to their husbands. Before that, it was Tim Walz and the camo hats. Night after night after night, we were told all these things and gimmicks were going to somehow push Harris over the line. And we were just ignoring the fundamentals. Inflation, people feeling like that they were barely able to tread water at best. That was the fundamentals of the election. And so I think that both parties should always look at the results of an election and figure out what went right and what went wrong. But I think for all of us who cover elections and talk about elections and do this on a day-to-day basis, we have to figure out how to understand, talk to, and listen to the half of the country that rose up tonight and said, we've had enough.
So there you have it. I fully agree with him, at least on a political analyst level. But let's turn it around, Sam. Why did you think Trump won the presidential election?
Wow. Well, that's a good question. I think there's probably a bunch of things that helped him. He had his base, which would be more of the conservatives, and he didn't have us, from the beginning. But I guess, like, the conservatives, we voted for him the first time because it was either him or Hillary, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when we watched him govern, staunch conservatives really liked what they were seeing. We were pleasantly surprised, I think. I can say I was pleasantly surprised. And then on top of that, I wasn't making the most money, but I felt my richest under Trump. I'm making, maybe double what I made under Trump, right? Not quite double what I made under Trump, but I feel much poorer right now than I did with Trump. So I like that, the whole money, and I like his more conservative governing than what I expected he would do. And then I know this kind of goes back into race a little bit, but I know a guy from my work. He was a supervisor at the time. He's now working a different job. And he's black, and he was all about Hillary before the election. But after Trump passed the tax cuts and after his pocketbook started doing really good, he said, don't tell, other people this, but I'm really glad that we have Trump in office, And I think he was probably excited to vote for him again. So, I think Trump, he had his conservative base just based off of the beginnings of his governing. I think he gained more people because of the economics, the great economics. And then I think maybe he kind of got hurt with the whole January 6th thing just because of how the news spun it. But then all of the demonizing that they did to hurt Trump kind of got undone when they started trying to throw him in jail, and it seemed unfair or like they were going over the top. Something just didn't feel right about it. And I know a lot of blacks that didn't like that whole deal, even Democrats, that is, or traditional Democrats. And then I don't really see it, but I've been told by other people, including people that said before this event they were voting for Joe Biden. It was the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania. I know several people that were voting for Joe Biden. And after that, they said, Trump has won the election, is what they told me. Mm-hmm. And even they seemed to start to be persuaded in Trump's direction after that. So I think, you have all those things, but maybe if I had to call out one thing, it would be, or two things. It would be the lawfare and the assassination attempt. And I think the assassination attempt may not have had as much of an effect on people if it weren't for the backdrop of the lawfare. So I don't know. That's a good question. So you have that. And then, of course, again, you have to look at the deficiency of his competition. Kamala Harris just was not doing it, I don't think, for a lot of people. People were not excited about her, except maybe women were, but men, I don't think we were excited about her at all, you know? So yeah, you have a good experience with Trump, and then you see how the system seems to be going after him, starts to make you wonder why. And the other person seems to be a very weak candidate. I mean, who else are you going to vote for but Trump?
Yeah. For me, again, I don't disagree with anything you just said, Sam. I despise political ads. I couldn't wait for the election to be over. You know what I did?
What's that?
I changed my VPN to the UK or to some other country. So I stopped getting political ads from the US, from YouTube. Because I listen to a lot of YouTube while I'm working and stuff like that, and the political ads would have driven me nuts. So I just put in some foreign country so I don't hear these political ads. But there are two ads that stood out to me. One was with Obama asking for donations for Kamala, and one was with Trump asking for donation. I'm going to play both of them, and I'm going to tell you why these two stood out to me. Here is Obama first.
$5. That is all it takes to make a difference in this election. If every single person watching this pitched in just $5 right now, Kamala and Tim would have the resources they need to win in November. Because while Donald Trump's campaign is funded by billionaires looking for a tax cut, Kamala and Tim have the strongest grassroots team in their corner. And any amount adds up when we're in it together. So what do you say? $5. I know it means the world to them.
All right, that's Obama asking for $5 for his campaign. Here's Trump asking for $5 as well.
Our first quarter fundraising numbers are due to be given to the Federal Election Commission very, very soon. If you don't have the funds, you don't even have to think about doing it. Don't give anything. Don't donate. Take care of yourself. But if you could chip in, if you've done well, if you've remembered those great 4 years that we had where you made a lot, we need your help in posting massive numbers because the other side will spend billions and billions of dollars to stop us. That's the only thing that can possibly stop us. They raise so much money from many of the wrong people. So get in there. If you can afford it, chip in, and let's get it done. Thank you very much.
No, you say, MCG, what stood out to you about those two ads that caused you to stop and actually listen to them? Well, firstly, Obama say, hey, $5, just $5. And Trump say, $5 if you can afford it. What Trump just did was connected with the small man. And he's a billionaire. I remember there was a time in my life where I wouldn't be able to give anybody $5. When I graduated from college, I was dirt poor. So if you had asked me for $5, I was like, I don't have $5. What are you doing? But Obama come across as, to me, as, look, it's just $5. I used to deliver pizza for one of the major pizza trains. In the training, they tell us, when you go, this is how we say, Mr. such and such or Mrs. Smith or whatever, you ordered a large pepperoni with extra cheese, and that was just $25. They tell you to use the word just because it minimizes to the hearer that, oh, this pizza wasn't too expensive. It was just $25. So it almost come across me as, it's just $5. Donate to Kamala and Tim. And Trump come and say, well, I understand that you might not be able to afford it, but if you can, would you give us? To me, he connected with the people. And that's hard to say when you're considered someone who probably have been a millionaire or a millionaire, grew up in a wealthy family all his life. But I think that kind of gave it like a good overarching picture of that. He connected with the people, connected with the everyday man. He had better policies, immigration, cost of living. And quite honestly, I think he's just the lesser of both evils, even though the Democrats didn't tell us that.
I think you're right. Another way that Trump connected with the common man was going on to Joe Rogan's podcast, and J.D. Vance did the same thing. He was able to sit down with Joe Rogan and converse for 3 hours, and people just got a sense of who he actually was. When you're sitting down talking to someone for 3 hours, you can't really put up a front. Your talking points won't last past the first 30 minutes. And after that, people get to see who you really are. And he was able to connect with people that way. Kamala Harris, not only did she not do the podcast, she insisted that Joe Rogan would do the podcast on her terms.
Mm-hmm.
It just shows this elitist sort of mentality that the Democrat Party has right now. And they've long since proven themselves no longer to be the party of the common man. So when you say, MCG, that he reached the common man, the small man, that's exactly what happened. And it was evident throughout both of their campaigns.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's wrap it up. What do you think is the next move? Because we're not talking about politics. We probably turn off all the excellent folks on the Democratic side already. They probably not listen to this podcast all the way to the end. But as removing barriers, we're not just talking about politics because we just want to talk about politics. I think at this point, what is the next move for Bible-believing Christians? Because Christians voted for Trump way more than they voted for Kamala. What do you think is the next move for Christians? I start with you, Jade, and I'll shoot it to Sam.
I think that these last 8 to 10 years, we've gotten a glimpse behind the curtain, as it were, to the inner workings of our country. I think a lot of our institutions that we thought were solid, we've come to realize just how thoroughly corrupt and rotted through they are. And I'm grateful that there are people like Donald Trump, like Elon Musk, like Tulsi Gabbard, like RFK, like Larry Elder, like Thomas Sowell, Daily Wire, fill in the blank with a number of people who have stood in the gap, despite their ideological differences and political differences, stood in the gap to say, no, we will not bow the knee to this extreme leftist agenda. We're going to fight back. And in doing so, they showed this generation and the next how to fight back. I'm very, very grateful for that, because it's easy to think that when you're living under the boot of your government that you have no options, there's nothing that you can do. And that's simply not the case. So what should Christians do? Well, we have a window of opportunity here to really engage the culture and engage people for the gospel, for the truth, to do something to undo the inoculation, the inculcation of leftist ideology that everyone seems to be holding on to, that would allow them to vote the way that they do, that would allow them to think that it's okay for them to kill their babies, that it's okay for people to allow their children to mutilate their bodies, that it's okay to do all of these things. One of the things that blew my mind about the Harris campaign, one of the ads that stood out to me was the ad where the husband and the wife go to vote, and she voted a different way than her husband thought she did. And she lied to him about it. And it was like this hush, hush, women are going to vote the way that they're going to vote. Your husband doesn't need to know. It basically lied to your husband. Everything in the campaign for the Democrat Party, they ran on some sort of vice, whether it's lying to your husband or killing your babies or mutilating your bodies or disregarding the law of the country and letting people trample over the border. Everything was on some sort of vice. And
wow,
we simply can't, the country can't thrive when it's thumbing its nose at God the way that this party seems to have as their platform. And so anyway, the next step for Bible-believing Christians is to engage your neighbor, engage your community for the gospel, knock on their doors, share Christ with them, raise your children in the fear, nurture, and admonition of the Lord, go to church, encourage the brethren, worship God, and create culture and a place where you inspire other people to do the same. And if you are in a position to do something big and you have a platform, go ahead and do it. Elon Musk was in a position to buy Twitter, and I really believe he, in many ways, single-handedly changed the course of the marketplace of ideas in this country. The censorship, the way that he stood up against censorship, he was uniquely positioned and able to do it, and he did. And so we may not have billions of dollars to throw at a failed company like Twitter, now X, but we can raise our children to love the Lord. We can witness to our neighbors. We can evangelize the lost. We can go to church. We can worship and praise God. We can do excellent work in our homes and at our jobs, and we can influence others for Christ. And hopefully, by God's mercy, we can start to be salt and light in a country that has long since turned its back on its creator. And I think that's what Bible-believing Christians should do. Sam, what do you think?
I couldn't agree more. I feel like we got an opportunity to do this in Trump's last term. Okay, this is going to sound a little funny, but I want to say that if I'm remembering correctly, well, this part I know I'm remembering correctly. When Trump was running back in 2016, Alyssa and I, we were not Trump supporters. We thought he was a phony conservative. And truth be told, I still to this day think that he is a Kennedy Democrat. But the left has gone so far left now that I probably am more closely aligned with Kennedy Democrats than I am with, the woke agenda that we see coming from Democrats today. Well, you know what? Actually, of course, Trump is a Kennedy Democrat. He even has Kennedy on his, looks like he's going to be part of his cabinet.
Yep,
so that
RFK.
right there
Yep.
kind of proves that he's a Kennedy Democrat.
Yep.
But yeah, so listen, we were really upset back in 2016 when he won the Republican nomination. And we're like, oh no, this is a disaster. But of course, we weren't going to vote for Hillary. So we had nothing but to vote for Trump. But I want to say around the time of the election, I don't remember if this was just before or just after. And this is the part that's going to sound a little funny, but I felt like the Lord came to me in my sleep and said something along the lines. And again, this is what, 8, 9, I don't even know how many years ago now. So the memory's a little fuzzy, but I want to say what I got from this encounter, for lack of a better word, was that the Lord was saying, you know, don't worry about attacking Trump. Don't be all about going after Trump. And I got the impression that the Lord was trying to suggest to me that Trump was going to block a lot of attacks coming for Christians, and that we as Christians needed to take this opportunity while we're being shielded to get serious about promoting the gospel in America. And I thought about that and I started to think, you know, what can I do? And I thought about it for a little bit, and I think a few ideas came to mind, but they were inconvenient and I didn't take it seriously. And so ultimately, I think I did not nothing, but close to nothing. And that's a shame, you know? And then later on, Biden comes in, and I don't know whether it's Biden or some other people, but a lot of persecution start coming Christians' ways. People who are, you know, just trying to educate mothers. They're not being violent, but mothers may be about to get an abortion, and Christians are trying to educate them. Hey, you know, you don't have to get an abortion. Do you know what an abortion is? Here's some information about it. Folks that are doing that are getting attacked by Biden's DOJ, you know, and then people who are going against this whole, like in Mobile County, a lot of parents here, we don't want drag queens doing story time with our children. And a lot of us had the impression, because political figures here were telling us that it wasn't happening, but it turns out that it was happening even here in Mobile County, right? So then parents start to attend PTA meetings and stuff like that. Well, now it turns out that Biden's DOJ and the FBI are marking parents, not just here in Mobile, but across the country, that go to these PTA meetings. They're marking them as potential domestic terrorists. Well, not potential. I believe they are getting like a terrorist label of some sort. And so, you know, whenever we try to fight against this dark agenda, even just like indoctrination of our own children, and then of course we have parents where they have no say in their children being sterilized and having body parts chopped off so they can, you know, change their identity, if you will. This is stuff that's really happening to parents and to our children, and the government is actually coming after us. And you might imagine that the government may not be using as much force as they would like because they have an election coming up, which is now over. But if Kamala were elected, you know, they might act even more forcefully, especially with Tampon Tim as the vice president. They might act even more forcefully to sterilize our children, you know, and chop them up and all that, which is, you know, it's not just politics now, but it's actually more of an anti-Christian agenda, you know. Even if you look at how Tampon Tim treated the church in Minnesota, I think it's Minnesota's his home state.
Yep.
When we had the COVID lockdowns, he was one of the more strict governors and one of the more harsh governors against the church. It's like, I think that the church was facing real possibilities of elevated persecution here in America. And so we have another opportunity, I feel, with Trump being reelected. I don't imagine Trump doing much persecution of the church. I mean, we were a huge part of the people who helped push him across the finish line. So to me, this is another opportunity. We need to get serious. If my dream was indeed from the Lord, I feel like I need to buckle down and do what the Lord told me. And I'm hearing from other Christians all across the country that feel similar, whether they felt the Lord talking to them directly or not. Seems like a lot of Christians feel like we need to get serious. We need to promote the gospel and bring about a revival, because America, at least up until recently, it seems like America has forsaken God. And if we don't stop this, we will be destroyed, you know? So we need to do something about this. And now's our opportunity. So let's do it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just going to say this briefly and then we'll get out of here. In Trump's first term, the late pastor Clarence Sexton said basically what you guys are saying. God has given us a window, and he said that window is a window for revival. And I think a lot of times Christians look at that and think, oh, window's revival, let's win the lost. That's a part of it. But where does revival start? Revival starts with the church, with you and I as Christians. We are the ones that now have this window. We need to be revived, to be made alive again, to rekindle the embers. And I think Christians in this nation believe that politics will do that. But politics will not do it. As Pastor Clara Sexton said, we may have a window, but politics will not do that. Politics will not win the loss. Politics will not change the course of this country. It may slow it down. Trump being in office is going to slow a lot of things down, but it's not going to change the course of this country. So my plea is this: until Jesus tarries, our love for him should be demonstrated through our obedience, and that should continue. Our love for Christ demonstrated through our obedience should continue, regardless of who is in the White House. And regardless of who is in the White House, in season, out of season, we need to be preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, trying to win the lost for him.
When it comes to revival in America, I did briefly look over the history of revivals in America. And one of the things that I found in common with the first and second revival, and then there are other more minor revivals, but they all seem to have something in common, and that is that America was increasingly decadent. Our economy was not at its best. There were a few other things, but there were a lot of bad things that were in common. War. I think we had a lot of war going on for the first and second Great Awakening. Either war had already happened or it was about to happen. But the good things that I saw in common, you talked about revival starting with the church. What I noticed, and I want to say I heard this from somebody else as well, is that I know with the second Great Awakening, there were a lot of Bible studies that were happening. I want to say for like a year and a half, 2 years before the revival really exploded. People were having Bible studies in their home. These were not church-sponsored Bible studies, and I don't have anything wrong with the church. I'm not saying that the church shouldn't sponsor Bible studies, but maybe the fact that they were individuals that opened up their homes and said, hey, let's have a Bible study. Maybe that indicates how serious the people were. I don't know why, but that seems to be a common thread, I want to say, with both the first and second Great Awakening. But yeah, so like people would open up their homes, they'd have Bible studies, and these were church people, but they just want to get more serious in their daily living about following God's word. And then after about a year and a half of that, then the church seemed to start to grow, and then you could start to see revival happen. So I guess I thought that was interesting, and I wonder if maybe we should be more serious about that, studying the Bible and trying to encourage our neighbors and our community as well in that.
Oh, yeah. Bible studies are a powerful means of evangelism. So, yeah, definitely.
Even amongst those that are saved.
Oh, yeah.
That we know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Sam, we'll leave it right there. Thank you so much for joining us on the Removing Barriers podcast.
All righty.
This is the Removing Barriers podcast. If the podcast or the blog were a blessing to you, leave us a rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to share the podcast with your friends. Removing Barriers, a clear view of the cross.
Thank you for listening. To get a hold of us, to support this podcast, or to learn more about Removing Barriers, go to removingbarriers.net. This has been the Removing Barriers podcast. We attempted to remove barriers so that we all can have a clear view of the cross.